Hello, my name is Tony. Well, this is something a little out of left field, something I hadn't previously considered because I honestly forgot this film actually existed, until Ryan Sharkey brought it up in a comment posted about the Fourth Protocol video. He wondered if I might like to review it. Yeah, I might, I thought, if only I could remember anything about it, and for a moment I was thrown, scrambling to reassemble some functioning memory of what the Norliss Tapes was. The title resonated strongly, but the rest was momentarily blank. Then Roythinus popped into my head, as he does from time to time, completely uninvited, the freeloading bastard. It clicked into place, and slowly things coalesced. In the early 70s, ITV used to screen horror films on a Monday night. They were mainly Hammer-produced offerings from the 50s and 60s and ran at 10:30 after the news. These proved so popular they started the same thing on a Friday, only the schedule here consisted of a combination of Universal flicks from the 30s, 40s and 50s with some 70s made-for-TV stuff mixed in. Regular appearances were made by two Dan Curtis efforts, namely The Night Stalker and its sequel, The Night Strangler. And then a third reared its head. If the name Dan Curtis means nothing to you, allow me to explain. He was an American writer, producer, director who made his mark in the States with a daytime soap opera, Dark Shadows, featuring a vampire. It ran from 1966 to 1971. Yeah, process that, Emmerdale fans. A daytime soap opera about a vampire. One Barnabas Collins, played by a guy called Jonathan Frid. Show only really took off when Collins was introduced 10 months into its initial run. Before that, it was treading all over its own dick. All this means very little in the UK, but it was a massive hit stateside and made Frid a household name throughout the former colony, and resulted in two feature films, House of Dark Shadows in 1970 and Night of Dark Shadows in 71. 1,225 episodes of the original show were made, and it was in syndication for over 40 years. Tim Burton, who else, reimagined it as a comedy with Johnny Depp in 2012, but that stank the joint up like the corpse of a rabid polecat marinated in liquid skunk shit and left out in the sun to decay. It subsequently bombed its box office balls off big time. Funny, who could have seen that coming? I mean, his remake of the Planet of the Apes had been such a beloved crowd-pleasing masterwork. In 1972, Curtis produced a made-for-TV movie that pulled the highest ever ratings of any US TV movie up to that point. The Night Stalker was adapted from a then unpublished novel by Jeff Rice. The teleplay was by the quite wonderful Richard Matheson. It featured Darren McGavin as Carl Kolchak, an investigative journalist looking into the activities of a serial killer in Vegas who drains his victims of blood. So popular was it that a sequel, The Night Strangler, emerged in 1973, with Matheson scripting again. This was followed by a one-season series, Kolchak the Night Stalker, which ran from 74 to 75. One of the benefits of the two films was Kolchak's stormy relationship with his editor Vincenzo, played by Simon Oakland. The pair bicker and argue, with Vincenzo continuously exasperated by Kolchak's egotism, antics and behaviour. Matheson threw in some very appealing Chandler-esque dialogue, complete with wisecracks, employing black humour to good effect. On the back of this success, Curtis conceived of the Norliss Tapes, a pilot for a proposed TV series that never materialised. It has a solid foundation on which a series could have been constructed, but for any number of reasons it was not to be, and the original pilot is all that remains. Initial problem for me in the present day after the hippocampus dysfunction was sourcing a version to hack through again and refresh my dismal memory. Anchor Bay had released a DVD transfer in 2006, but that's now out of print. YouTube to the rescue then. The full movie is available to view in the original aspect ratio, so any excuse I was looking for to justify not doing it just turned to crapola before my eyes. It is, however, something I am happily going to use to rationalise the poor image quality of this video. I've cleaned it up a bit, but what can you really expect from a fat, lazy, unskilled YouTuber? Not much, I'd imagine, and that's exactly what you'll get. Sorry anyway, just feels polite to apologise. I don't have to mean it, so I'm told. David Norliss Roythinus is a writer in receipt of an advance from his publishers to research and whack out a book debunking the supernatural, spiritualists and paranormal con artists. When we first encounter him in his house, he's a troubled man, desperate to see his publisher Sanford Evans, Don Porter. Evans arranges to meet with him for lunch on the following day, but Norliss fails to turn up. As the days pass, Evans becomes more concerned by Norliss's unexpected unexplained absence. He charges Norliss's lawyer with finding him, which he fails to achieve, advising that the man has disappeared without a trace. As a final resort, Sanford visits the Norliss residence and finds a series of cassette tapes. Thinking these might hold a clue as to his whereabouts, he plays the first tape, identified as tape 1 by the number 1 printed on it, bit of a giveaway, and listens as Norliss narrates the spooky tale of one of his investigations. Norliss is asked by an acquaintance, Marcia Stearns, Michelle Carey, to investigate the strange case of her sister, Ellen Court, Angie Dickinson. Ellen's husband, James, had recently died of Pick's disease, a particularly aggressive form of organic dementia. James was a renowned sculptor, and they lived in a large mansion near Monterey, where James has a studio and workshop. One night, Ellen is awakened by a German shepherd, that's a dog, that is, not some kraut who tends sheep, who leads her to her husband's studio. Therein, she disturbs an intruder, who kills the dog with his bare hands. Ellen lets him have both barrels of a shotgun chest center before legging it. When the police arrive, they find no body and no trace of any intruder, which is odd enough. But even more curious is Ellen's insistence that she recognized the man who was, she alleges, her dead husband. On the same night, a young Carmel shop assistant is fatally assaulted in her car whilst driving home. When the police attend the wreck, they find her dead and drained of blood. Local sheriff Hartley Claude Akins decides to withhold the salient facts until his finely tuned detective mind can come up with some answers. They'll be withheld indefinitely then. During his investigation, Norliss finds that James had become obsessed with the occult not long before his death. He involved himself with a mysterious Mademoiselle Jacqueline Vonetta McGee, who gave him an Egyptian scarab ring, which he insisted on being buried with. The ring grants life after death, but the full deal is more complicated. In return for immortality, James must sculpt a statue of clay mixed with human blood. The statue is that of the Egyptian deity Sargoth. Once complete, James must perform the ceremony of resurrection so that Sargoth can live again and enter the modern world. And then, well, I don't know what the plan is after that, no one says, but I'm guessing it's nothing good. Evil dead Egyptian gods popping up again after thousands of years probably got more on their mind than some light grocery shopping at Walmart and learning how to rollerblade. Bodies start piling up. Victims include Marcia, gallery owner Langdon, Hurd Hatfield, who wants the scarab ring for himself, and Mademoiselle Jekyll, who, in an abrupt about-face, is suddenly opposed to the process she seems to have initiated. She now wants James stopped by removing the scarab ring from his finger and returning him to the grave. In the end, only Norliss and Ellen stand in the way of the undead ghoul and his nefarious intentions. Do they succeed? Shall I spoil it? Yep, who cares? They do succeed. Norliss figures that a circle of blood laced with oil or petrol around the statue and then set alight will trap James and Sargoth within and burn the studio to the ground, the two fiends along with it. And so it is, and up it goes. Film ends with Sanford ejecting the tape, none the wiser as to David's whereabouts, and slapping in the next one, handily labelled with the number 2. That'll be the second adventure, or ultimately not. The idea of a fresh tape constituting a new episode would have worked well as a serial, but as I've already mentioned, that didn't happen. Still, as a standalone outing, the premise itself is fine. As to whether Sanford will ever find out whatever happened to baby Norliss, we don't know, and we never will. The Norliss tapes failed to replicate the success of The Night Stalker and The Night Strangler, and feels like Curtis producing a somewhat cheaper and less intelligent knockoff of his own product. William F. Nolan scripted from a story by novelist Fred Mustard Stewart. Stewart was most famous for his occult mystery novel The Mephisto Waltz, which was filmed in 1972. Nolan is probably best known as the co-author of the novel Logan's Run, which became a successful film and dud US TV series. There's not a lot of surplus energy in his teleplay for the Norliss tapes, where Richard Matheson was quite adept at combining horror fiction with humour to add that extra element of fun and engagement to the absurd proceedings. Nolan adheres to something a bit more stone-faced and morbidly theatrical. The Norliss tapes won't knowingly raise a smile, at least not intentionally. Likewise, he doesn't establish much in the way of characterization. Whereas Kolchak was something of a likeable rogue and reckless wiseacre, Norliss is much blander, less colourful, a situation that is certainly not helped by casting Roy Thinnes in the role. He's pretty much a one-note performer with limited charisma and lacking of a definitive persona to bring to the table. None of the characters come to life, so you end up not investing much concern or interest in whether they survive. Angie Dickinson seems content that hers is just another TV movie part in another TV movie before she rolls out for the next one down the line. Nice to glimpse the lovely Vonetta McGee showing up prior to playing Clint Eastwood's romantic interest in The Eiger Sanction, and Michelle Carey rather fetchingly catches the eye, whilst Claude Akins seconds coast through in standard belligerent cop without a clue mode. The ghoul, zombie, undead, reanimated corpse monster played by Nick Dimitri, prolific bit player and stuntman, looked quite creepy and it might shock him back in the early 70s. Now he resembles a poorly made up golem with psychedelic contact lenses, a bit like a blue-grey skinned cadaver version of David Banner when he's in the early stages of transforming into the Incredible Hulk. Certainly, he's lively for a dead guy though, and you can't fault his enthusiasm for running, jumping and standing still whilst people shoot at him. I am always going to give it marks for one particular scene, which, although it wasn't intended to, always makes me laugh out loud. Sorry, could you say that again? Ah, there you are. Exactly the sort of literate communication you would hope for from an undead relative. Seems the downside of transcending the grave is that conversation becomes a bit limited, and our boy is really monging it up big time here. You could genuinely believe he had Pick's disease before he bit the big tin halfpenny. I maintain the idea driving the Norliss Tapes is creatively sound. It's just the execution and storytelling that's off. The inclusion of some stupid scenes to advance the narrative to its conclusion are problematic. Who knew that Norliss had a rare talent for chemistry, and how did he come by the laboratory equipment we see him working with, his Bunsen burner, glass flasks and test tubes, in the dubious production of home-baked flammable blood? Some might think it adds to the mystery, but if so, some need to snap out of it, because I just think it's a case of dumbass interjection to accommodate the narrative in its journey to where the writer has decided it's going. There were surely more credible ways of getting it there, yeah? I'm informed the Norliss Tapes has achieved a low-level cult status over time, and the fact that Anchor Bay slapped it out on DVD would support this. It has its fans then, and when I was young and infinitely less discerning, I would have been one of them. I don't hold the same affection for it now as I do for other Curtis productions, The Night Stalker, The Night Strangler, and the 1976 Ollie Reed occult potboiler Burnt Offerings. But I won't deny the nostalgic tingle I felt as I fired it up again, and I'd be telling porkies if I made out I begrudged the 72 minutes I spent rewatching it, because I don't. Equally, I won't try to sell it to you as essential viewing. In all conscience, I can't, because it's not, and would suggest that if you fancy something of this ilk, you'd be better served by the two Kolchak flicks first, and then, if you find yourself still craving more, give the Norliss Tapes a spin. Thanks for your time and attention, appreciated as always. If you want to, hit like or don't like, comment or subscribe. Up to you crazy kids to stay free to do what you want to do. I'll be back with something else in a while, you can almost bet the wife and kids on it, and I'd like to think that some of you would. Soon, pilgrims.